Not content with terrifying us for the past 18 months over COVID, our leaders, international, political and scientific, have been back on the case today with dire doomsday predictions of the end of the world being in sight thanks to climate change.
The door is still ajar. There is still time to act, but the door is closing, and I think there will come a point where it'll be irreversible. And that's why, to avoid catastrophic climate change, we need to take action now.
Mother Nature is not waiting. The past decade was the hottest on record. Dangerous greenhouse gases are at levels not seen in 3 million years. Global temperature has already risen 1.2 degrees Celsius, racing towards the threshold of catastrophe.
It's both stark and rightly uncomfortable. And I think it makes a very clear point, which is that 2020s is the decade where you've really got to make something happen. And I think that's important because it's very often looked at as, well, 2050, that's a long way off. The whole point is it's not, it's now. If we don't do it now, then we don't stand a chance.
Now, from the off, I should tell you I've been an environmentalist concerned about carbon emissions since growing up as a young boy in New Zealand, where I was scared to death about the then depleting ozone layer. Of course, we need to protect our natural world. And in the UK, that's exactly what we have been doing, making up the most environmentally friendly programme in the developed world. We will continue to do our bit to save the environment at a much increased rate, by the way, over the next decade. But I have two issues that I will tackle in tonight's digest. First, the hysterical and purposefully provocative language coming from the United Nations today via the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, like Code Red, which is designed to cause fear, especially among young people, just like me, 3 decades ago. This is straight out of the UN's playbook. As Guido Fawkes reported today, the UN has been predicting planetary disaster for decades, usually scheduled to happen in about a decade's time. And there's ample proof of that. It was way back in 1972 that Maurice Strong, the first UN Environment Programme Director, said the world had just 10 years to avoid catastrophe. 10 years later, his replacement, Mustafa Tolba, said we had until the turn of the millennium before dealing with an environmental catastrophe as irreversible as any nuclear holocaust. As 1990 rolled around, and yes, we will still hear, Tolba said we had just 5 years, otherwise we'd lose the climate struggle. You get the drift, right? Perhaps it's a successful PR strategy to allow leaders to convince their populations they need to spend more taxpayer money to combat climate change. But I resent the constant spreading of terror, especially given we are making plans and being at the forefront of change here in the UK. What I think the UN should really be doing is calling out international bad actors like China, by far the worst carbon criminal, responsible for 29.1% of all emissions internationally, and they're doing nothing to change it either. But that wouldn't be PC, would it? It's far easier to target liberal democracies like the UK, where the Extinction Rebellion mobs run wild. Then the next big question is how much we must individually pay as Brits to pursue this net zero aim and a green agenda, when even so-called lefty countries like Canada continue to spew out emissions at 3 times the rate of the UK. Boris Johnson boasted today the UK is leading the way, decarbonising our economy faster than any country in the G20 over the last 2 decades. But given sluggish progress by our democratic equivalents like the US and Australia, that enthusiastic approach is gonna hit our pocketbook, you know. A Treasury report yet to be published has found it's working-class families that will be hit hardest by net zero plans. The Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, is said to be increasingly concerned about a looming crisis over the cost of living for British households. Tory MP Craig McKinlay is launching a new group of backbenchers concerned about ill-thought-through plans to decarbonise homes and axe all petrol and diesel vehicles within a decade. Electric cars, for example, are simply too expensive for most folk as it stands. McKinlay told Politics Home, "I'm trying to just get something sensible out of the middle that has a half chance of being achieved and that isn't going to completely kill us off politically. COP26 starts in Glasgow in November and is likely to dominate mainstream media coverage for weeks. And I'm sorry about that, you're going to have to sit through a lot of it. Its spokesperson, Allegra Strachan, has so far told us that we need to rinse our plates before putting them in the dishwasher, maybe join the Green Party, and then it's okay for her to drive a diesel car, even though we shouldn't be. That messaging sucks. We need to get real and start talking about how much net zero is actually going to cost every one of us in the UK, and whether it's fair of us to have to take that financial hit when the likes of China refuse to change a damn thing. Now, I agree with the anonymous cabinet minister who today told the Daily Mail civil servants who refuse to return to the office should have their pay docked. They said people who have been working from home aren't paying their commuting costs, so they have had a de facto pay rise. So that is unfair on those who are going into work. If people aren't going into work, they don't deserve the terms and conditions they get if they are going into work. The time has come for that minister to go on the record and own those comments publicly. Our cities remain ghost towns during the working week, even though COVID is in retreat and the government has acknowledged we need to learn to live with this virus. But until taxpayer-funded workers who have not lost a penny in pay these past 18 months when private businesses crumble, unless they set the example by getting off their asses and back to their desks, it's hard to take such an aim seriously. Meanwhile, over the weekend, it emerged some of these civil servants are putting the finishing touches on government plans for more lockdowns over the winter. Yes, you heard me right. And a Number 10 spokesman even confirmed it to the newspaper. The spokesman said, as part of our strategy to manage the virus, it is both right and sensible that we maintain contingency plans for reimposing restrictions at a local, regional or national level if evidence suggests they are necessary. Please stop. I was thinking about the consequences of this sort of lockdown-obsessed, risk-averse society over the weekend. And I concluded that my heart breaks the most for the teenagers and 20-somethings who should be exploring the world, learning about other cultures, discovering who they are, and working out what they want to do with the rest of their lives. We can never gift those precious years back. So it's time to set the young free, hopefully set us all free, and rule out future lockdowns, not plan for bloody more of them.